Every day, before the blockade, about 20 million barrels of oil and condensate squeezed through the Strait of Hormuz, roughly one-fifth of global oil use and more than a quarter of all seaborne oil trade. Most of that flow comes from just 6 Gulf exporters: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iran, and Qatar. Saudi Arabia dominates the route, shipping around 5.5 to 6 million barrels a day through Hormuz, about 38 to over 40% of all crude flows here, followed by Iraq at just over 3 million and the UAE at about 2 million barrels per day. Kuwait sends roughly 1.5 million barrels, Iran about 1.3 million, and Qatar close to 700,000 barrels per day, plus much of the liquefied natural gas that powers power plants from Asia to Europe. In short, the Strait of Hormuz is the main export artery for nearly all the big Gulf oil producers, and when it narrows or closes, their export earnings shrink overnight. On the demand side, about 84% of crude and 83% of liquefied natural gas that pass through Hormuz are headed to Asian markets. Europe receives a low teens share of the oil flow. India depends on it for about 42% of its crude, and China for roughly 40 to 45%. For Japan and South Korea, roughly 70+% of their oil imports come via Hormuz, making any disruption here a direct threat to their energy security. Smaller Asian importers like Pakistan, Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, and others also lean heavily on this route, adding another 14% or so of total Hormuz oil demand across the region. Europe and the United States get far less oil through Hormuz, but they are not immune to the blockade either. Europe takes a modest slice and the US still brings in about 500,000 barrels a day from Gulf producers through this choke point, around 7% of its crude imports, so any outage here still hits global prices at home. That's why a blockade in this one narrow waterway doesn't just hurt the Gulf. It threatens energy supplies from Beijing to Mumbai, from Tokyo to Berlin, and ripples all the way to Washington.